So the session today is based on, it's kind of a mixture of business, marketing, branding, and essentially social media. So we're going to wrap it into a little bit of a shorter time frame than what we usually do. And because it's all in one session, some other groups got homework on it, and you guys aren't going to get homework because I'm not going to see you on this topic again. So yay. But we'll do some practical, we'll do the homework elements in the session. So for those, I think I mentioned in the start, for those who don't know, I studied occupational therapy. So I didn't study business or marketing. So I do understand some might be coming more from a design or marketing or branding space, which I think is a great skill to have when you start teaching yoga. But about 5 years ago, I started Yoga South Africa, and I started working in that space, which was an online platform that was pretty much run off social media specifically. So everything that I'm sharing is a lot from my personal experiences and what I observe in the yoga community space. And I think I said this to you guys in one of the previous lectures, is when we start teaching yoga, or if you run your studio, it's suddenly as if you're not really only playing the role as yoga teacher. It's like you're a business owner, and you're a marketing manager, and you're the financial advisor, and you're the creative designer, and you're pretty much everything, especially if you are going to be taking on the role to run your own yoga business, or if you want to, market your studio or yourself. So this is kind of just looking at how you guys want to show up in the yoga space, if at all, right? So if you're doing this, I think we did kind of suss out, I think by a show of hands, who was here to teach? I think we had a majority of the people who were actually keen to teach. Some maybe like haven't quite decided yet. We'll see how it goes. So cool. So essentially, what we need to consider is what the yoga scene is looking like and how we can use it to market our offerings. Because essentially, for me, I want every single one of you guys to go out there and be successful as a yoga teacher, all right? Understanding that it is challenging and there are difficulties along that, but there's always a way in which we can navigate it, okay? So when we come into just the terminology of yoga business, it's quite a tricky thing, just the terminology itself, because we have to acknowledge that yoga is so much more. It's an ancient practice. We need to respect it and its traditional lineages. But at the same time, we have now chosen this as a career path. And so we're finding this balance of being respectful to this practice, but then also needing to make it a livelihood. All right. And the way that I like to navigate that, and I'm really glad that we did this session after your talk with Penny, because I feel you guys are in that frame of mind about ethics and how you show up as a yoga teacher. I think that forms a very big role as to how we market ourselves as a business, kind of our values and what we want to present to the yoga space. So bearing that in mind, for me, it always comes down to intention. I sat on the lecture and I know that kind of came up, just that wording itself. And then also authenticity, being ethical, holding true to your values. And I think if those are woven into the way in which you present your business, then that's obviously a good thing, right? So let's quickly talk about the importance of marketing. Okay. And I like to use this example because I have had so many conversations with teachers who started teaching 10 to 15 years ago, who will tell me stories and say, Taryn, we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have websites. We would just like take a little poster, and it would be something that they like created on Word or PowerPoint, if anything. Maybe they made it themselves, and it would just go up on the community notice board, and one person would tell their friend. And that was kind of it. You relied on word of mouth, pamphlets, community notice boards. I don't know when was the last time you guys read a community notice board. I actually did once, and I was pleasantly surprised how many things I found up there. But times are changing, all right? So there's, as much as we monitor and observe what's happening in the advertising space, we know that even this year particularly, everything's going online, everything's digital. And so if we want to showcase and just present what we are offering, it makes sense to do it in the space where people are already using that form of media. So whether that be through a website, newsletter, Instagram and Facebook, even something like a WhatsApp group, it's a way to communicate with them. And as you guys know, the yoga industry, I think no matter where you are teaching, is pretty saturated. There's a lot of yoga teachers. I think last year I tried to do some maths to determine how many yoga teachers do I think are being trained every year. And I thought in Cape Town alone, every year, you probably had like 500, I would guess, just in Cape Town. I think this year, if I had to guess, because a lot of trainings have been running online, but that would just be my give and take, maybe anywhere from 3 to 500. I would need to know the exact numbers. But if you think about that, that's a lot of yoga teachers. But I'm a bit of an optimist, so I'm going to always look on the positive side of things. I do think that a lot of people are also starting to practice yoga. It's becoming a lot more of a household name, if I can say it like that, where people are becoming aware of, yeah, this is a form of movement, this is a form of connection, this is a form of a spiritual practice. You guys spoke about different reasons why people come to their mats. So everyone's hearing about it. It's being recommended by healthcare professionals. It's maybe being incorporated in schools. And so as that awareness builds, it creates more opportunities for us as yoga teachers to go, okay, cool. This is what the yoga scene looks like. And the more you can understand what's happening in your intermediate area, that will help you a lot to understand, how can I show up in this space? How can I set myself slightly apart, offering something unique and slightly different, and really honing in on that skill so that you can, be successful in that space. So an example I like to use for that is in Cape Town, not counting 2020 because a lot has changed with studios. But if I think last year, there's a lot of studios available in Cape Town, all right? Let me rather say there's a lot of studios, but not a lot of teaching opportunities, all right? And that's just because you've got a core of 6 teachers, or maybe there's 10 to 12 teachers who travel between studios and they kind of fill up those spots. So it's really challenging to get a studio opportunity unless you have an in, or you've been practicing before, or an availability comes up. However, I've noticed that there's a lot of more pop-up, like little outdoor things, or a small home-based studio, or yoga retreats being offered, or yoga at a market, or I saw there was a sup yoga, which I thought was pretty fun and I'm dying to try out. And so there's yoga in different places, yoga in schools. A friend of mine, I'm in Fish Hoek, so we don't have a lot of big studios here, they're all small, but a friend of mine teaches yoga at a rehabilitation clinic here, or you might be teaching in a hospital, for the nurses and the staff, which another friend of mine does. So it's almost thinking outside the box, and it would depend on what framework you guys entered into this course on, thinking, where are you going to teach? And you might have changed your mind. You might have come into this course and go, that prenatal or that kids yoga kind of sounds pretty fun. Or maybe you completely go off on a different track. Maybe you love the yin yoga tomorrow, who knows? So you really get to explore these different styles and set yourself apart. Okay, so that's just pretty much give us some context with that. So I must admit, a lot of the input I'm going to be giving, and I think it's only Eva that's in Kenya, and there is, I think even I spoke that there is quite a lot of yoga in Kenya, or retreats and festivals and stuff like that. I think she's even shared it on the group. But my insight mostly comes from South Africa. So if you're planning on teaching overseas, it's not really my ball game. I've never taught overseas, but I mean, yoga's bigger there. So it kind of depends on where you're going to show up. So I want to do a little bit of a practical exercise, because I want to use this time quite effectively, so that you leave here feeling more confident. Even if you're not feeling like you're going to teach, do the exercise anyway, because I think it'll help you find clarity. So just on a little piece of paper, you can write it in your book or anything else. I want you to, first question, write down what you want to teach as in a form of style. So, kids, we're only going to do yin tomorrow, but maybe you're gravitating more towards the slower practices. I think stick with style for now. You can write, I would say write 1 or maximum 2, because for the practical, I really want you to become, it's kind of like, I think of peak post sequencing, really focusing on one. I'm a firm believer, if your energy, refine your energy, that's where it goes. And so I found that works quite well to be specific. Then once you know what you want to teach, it can just be something as simple as vinyasa, that's fine. Then I want you to write where you want to teach, and where is not, Caroline, you can write Bikram if you're interested in learning more about it, because you'll probably have to do a little bit of extra training just to learn the script and the poses. So if you're keen on learning that, then write it down. Yeah. So, and that's also because the style is going to influence where you teach, right? So if it's Bikram, you're going to need a hot studio because you can't do it outside. You need the heat. That's kind of the whole point. So the next one, where. So I just want to go back to that. Could be a studio, at home. This could even be outdoors, retreats, schools, maybe, you know, another space, at a dance studio, at a whatever the case may be. Think of where. And I know this is quite a tricky one because sometimes you don't know where you want to teach until you start teaching. And also, just to let you know, you can change your mind. I think I've changed my mind like 3 times and I finally feel happy where I am. You guys are going to go out there and experiment. I want you to imagine or try to envision who your audience is. And you might not have a specific thing. You might say, anyone, it doesn't matter. But in audience, you might be specific towards a certain age. If you're teaching kids yoga, you might want to be targeted towards more sports goers, or maybe you want to target people who want more of a spiritual, emotional practice. So you can also try to link it by linking it back to what you think your offering is. So it can be corporates. You can say, I want to teach slower and mindfulness-based practices. Now that you guys did mindfulness last night, Monique is awesome. Did you guys enjoy the session, by the way? I just came off a 4-week course with Monique and it was lovely. So just, yeah, who you envision catering towards, your target group, and it can be quite loosely targeted. And then my 4th question, which is my favorite one, I want you to write down what makes you unique. So what you think you're going to bring to your teaching that sets you apart from others. It can be something, I'm going to give you examples because we always struggle with this. It can be something along the lines of, I have a really calm and nurturing presence. Maybe you like a little bit of power, so you want to be in a studio to bring that strength. Maybe you're playful, so you want to be with kids. It can also be prior experiences that you are bringing to your offering. Maybe you worked in the corporate space, so you know what people in the corporate space need. Maybe I heard Demi talking earlier, using her prior training, fusing it into something that you're offering. So, and really, you can be like quite boastful, but in a nice way. It's honest. So back yourself. So just take another minute for that. Cool. Now, what I want to do, and this is completely up to you, I'd like to share 2 different examples because I think it's going to help you guys give some insight into how different they are. Is anyone feeling pretty optimistic that they want to share? Just very short and quickly. Sasha.
The whole thing, or?
Just quick answers. So like what style, just like 1 or 2 little answers.
Okay. So for style, I said vinyasa and yin, and where I said like either at my house, like privates or online, or retreats and outdoors. And my audience, I just said people who want to move, which is very, very broad, but people who are interested in movement and mindfully moving. And then what makes me unique is that I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to move. I always wanted to be outside, but I just didn't get there. So I want to help people get there.
Cool. So what I like about Sasha's answers, you see that she's kind of linked 2 together. And I think that's, although I've asked you to refine it, I do think it's important if you are looking at teaching full time to have 2 options, because we're going to speak a little bit later about kind of the financial inputs and outputs that come from teaching yoga. So if she's teaching from home, it might be nice to do regular classes. And then every now and then, because one of her themes or one of her offerings is outdoors, it'll do outdoor day retreats or events or weekend retreats that are kind of an add-on, you know, because you need to run a lot of retreats to make it sustainable for you to run a retreats business, you know, like you're speaking 2 to 3 times a month, if that's possible. And so having 2 forms are in that line, but then the style will carry over, you know, it's still, this is my core offering. Anyone else? Second one? Demi?
I figure because everyone kind of knows the direction, then they can maybe see how I've mapped it out. So for what I want to teach is mindfulness, vinyasa, and yin, because it's that slow, more slightly conscious movement, where retreats, workshops, or my dream is my own studio. And then my unique audience is self-healers, so the spiritual, emotional space. And then what makes me unique is, I would say, my healing background with the holistic psychology and mindfulness.
Cool. Thanks so much for sharing. It's really exciting to see retreats. So what I'm actually, just to give you guys a bit of forward thinking, and then we'll hop back. What I am going to send you guys is a little bit of a branding checklist that I created, which I think is going to be quite helpful to just have it all on paper. And then also I invite you guys, if after this, if you would like to share where you want to go and what you have in mind, I think that's quite nice from a networking perspective to know what other people do, because it's amazing when you start to know what other people do and you know what you do, the referral system becomes a lot easier. So I have a friend who does something, someone approaches me and I go, oh, I don't think I'm the right fit, but this person. And so this is an awesome space, knowing what you guys do on your training, like who in your training is going out and doing what, because you guys will start your own referral and networking system, which is really useful. I might be on the more optimistic side that I do believe in community and collaboration, but I think it only works if those who want to share and integrate and refer, that's kind of just as with anything. So those are pretty cool. Did anyone say they wanted to teach in a studio? Were you putting your finger up, Trudy? Yes, okay. Trudy will share.
Yes, what I said is, it's also the styles I wanted to teach was vinyasa, and then one thing that I still need to learn, but what I really want to teach is aerial, aerial yoga. And I said in the studio, but also obviously because aerial yoga you can't really do that very much outside. So, but studio outdoors. The audience for me, and probably Zani and Helene, would be Bloemfontein mindset people, which is very interesting and something that it would probably be more of a challenge. It's an interesting mindset in Bloemfontein still. So bringing yoga to Bloemfontein. So and then what makes me unique with them be also for the from
Zani.
Yeah.
Well, I must
yeah.
I just want to say, I was really excited when I saw teachers from, well, all three of you from Bloemfontein, because I know there's not a lot of yoga there. And I think it's a place where I think you guys can initiate that awareness. I think it needs awareness and it needs offerings, right? No one will know. I think, do they even offer yoga at the gym there?
Yes, sometimes.
So maybe there's one or two. I was in Pretoria 6 years ago, and I will admit, seeing yoga in Pretoria 6 years ago versus now, it has also grown. And so I think you compare it to Joburg and Cape Town, where there's a lot of yoga, both have its perks and its downfalls. It's exciting to be able to run an event and maybe sell out, where in Cape Town that doesn't happen as easily because there's so many offerings and it takes a bit longer to build up. But I mean, everywhere is different. You're going to resonate and connect with different people. So one of the things I just wanted to highlight from that, and I think aerial is awesome. Keep an eye out, because I think Laura's going to do something exciting soon with aerial yoga. Has she told you? Okay, then it's not a secret. Then you guys know. Okay, cool. So what I wanted to just highlight there was, even if example, I'm going to use Cape Town because that's kind of my favorite reference. Even in Cape Town, if there are 3 different studios on the same street, which there are, then I almost see it as those areas are not specifically in competition with one another, although I do get the indication that sometimes teachers perceive that there's competition, because I believe that people come to yoga because they resonate with a teacher or a space. And for any of you guys who have practiced at different studios, you will see, or even different teachers, you will very quickly observe how different yoga can be. It's the reason why a yin yoga, or a slower flow yin yoga for older practitioners studio, is not in competition with a hot yoga studio, is not in competition with vinyasa, because there is something that separates them. Does the person like hot yoga or don't they? Do they want to move fast or do they want to move slow? Some studios will offer a blend of them because they want to reach as many people as possible. However, even if 10 people are offering vinyasa, you're going to have a different experience in every single class. All right. So I think having that understanding of what makes you unique is really going to let you show up confidently and say, well, this is what I offer. 10 people will resonate with me. Amazing. 10 people might not. That's fine. Maybe send them on to a friend of yours, because then we're all supporting each other. So I worked 2 years ago, I worked with a branding specialist. I think there's a cool chat on here, so just hold on. Sharice is in Tanin, that's why. That's cool. I think that's awesome. That's really, really exciting. It's going to have its challenges, like getting it out there and educating and awareness and really setting the foundations. But man, how exciting is that? So just coming back, so I worked 2 years ago with a branding web designer of sorts, who shared something with me that I found really valuable, and I'm still sharing it to years later. But when we look at branding yourself or branding your studio, these are the kind of things that you want to weave in. It's about not, I almost want to say, it's not just your logo and your website. And I would say that that is often the perception, like, this is my logo, there's my website, cool, this is what I offer. But in essence, you want to showcase students or clients or potential clients what experience they are going to have when they come to your class, because that's kind of the first interaction you want. I can see a pretty picture, but then I might ask, like, okay, but what am I getting from this? You know, what will they experience when they come? Do you want to add something, Karen, before I move on?
Yes, I just wanted to say, being a teacher in the movement industry for a long time, if people don't stick with you, it's got nothing to do with you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not because you're bad or naughty or ugly or anything. It's, you're not their flavor of the day and they want to, it's not personal. It's never personal.
It's not personal. We can all tell stories when you guys teach. It's really hard to hear that people don't like you, right? And we are in this profession because we like people, we like moving, we want to connect with people, we want to share this, right? So if we're so passionate about it and people don't like it, sometimes we're like, what am I doing wrong? And it's not about that. I've had someone walk out my class before. It was horrendous, and it sucked. But then I thought, well, maybe she doesn't like me, and that's fine. I mean, I was really upset for like a day or two, but you guys might experience that. And so it's important to know that this happens to other teachers, okay? And so, I mean, hopefully I don't ever wish that on you. But I mean, I've also been in a class before, you know, where I've wanted to walk out, which is horrible. I didn't, because I knew how it felt. But then again, it just happened. So I like what Karen said, is that it's not personal. It really is about taking time to find your students that resonate with you. And you will find when they click with you, it's because they like you as a teacher, as well as your style, as well as what you bring. And that's what keeps them coming back. It's the experience that you are offering them. I just want to add something onto that before I come to you, Sasha. So building on that definition of the branding, is she was saying, you know, it's not your logo, but she described it so beautifully to say it's the color of your walls in the studio. It's the music that's playing. It's the incense that's burning, maybe. It might be the type of music you play in your class. It might be the way in which you sequence your class. And essentially, it's that experience that you're putting into almost I want to say, like, you're packaging it. You're taking that experience and you've got it, and this is what we want to showcase to social media. And that is where the authenticity comes in. I'm not going to brand like, oh, hey, strong, powerful, get fit, look good kind of yoga, because that's not who I am. And maybe that's not what you want to send out into the space. So we want what we are showcasing, coming back to the ethics and authenticity, is to be a direct representation of our values. All right. That's fine, Zama. Hope everything's okay. Sasha.
I just wanted to come back and really expand on what Karen was saying with it's not personal. Like, I have some yoga, I mean, I've never walked out of a yoga class, that's really mean. But especially if I'm doing online things or YouTube videos, there are some videos where I get 5 minutes in and I put it off, and I don't want to be there. And for me, I have very sensitive hearing, and sometimes someone's voice just puts me off, and I find it sharp and it like rings through my head. I just can't do it, you know, even if they don't have a particularly shrill voice. There's nothing wrong with them. It just doesn't work for me. And I think that that's so important for us to remember, and just know it's not personal.
Yeah, I've had someone say to me, I said, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go do this teacher's class. Would you like to join me? And my friend just said, no, I can't listen to her voice. And I was very aware in that class. I'm like, what is it with this? And I was like, her voice sounds fine. And then that's when I realized it's sometimes even the way teachers say something. They might say something silly, like just pronounce something in an odd way that just, I mean, then I'm on the mat and going, why is this frustrating me? Okay, maybe I just need to, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's not this teacher and I just need to work that out. So it is, and it is a personal practice. And so that's why there are these personal factors that come into play. So it just kind of shows you guys how the uniqueness of each person is going to contribute to how you show up in the space. So keep in mind, I'm not going to go too far into branding, because essentially when we think about our values, our offerings, our unique audience, all of those answers, all those questions we asked there, that is the foundation of anything you build on. All right. Anything that comes above that, whatever, like your logo, the pretty pictures, your website, the content you decide to share on Instagram, everything is a direct build along those values. All right. So that's something that I wanted to mention in here, because you guys have just kind of gotten off your ethical chat with Penny. And then we start to even look at, okay, what is happening in the social media space? All right, what's happening on Instagram with yoga? Because I don't know how many of you guys first learned of yoga through Instagram. Was there anyone? Okay, so maybe there's a couple. So what was, Cherise, if you don't mind sharing, if you don't want to, it's fine. But what was your first experience of what yoga was, or what were you first seeing on Instagram?
Well, a lot of poses obviously I couldn't do. That was the main thing I saw. I think a lot of self-advertisement of people in poses. Yeah, I think a lot of self-advertisement.
So yeah, I mean, essentially, when we first start seeing yoga on Instagram, it completely depends who you follow. I mean, there's some incredible accounts out there who are, sharing certain messages, but I think the general perception is that, yes, there's extremely flexible, able bodies doing fancy postures, sometimes that aren't even yoga, they're just like calisthenics and acrobats, in maybe some minimal clothing. And there's a lot of comments of like self-love or whatever the theme is, not to like say that the theme's bad. It's more about the linking or the marriage of an image with a certain caption. So an image that might be portraying an extremely, possibly what I would imagine is an impossible pose on a rock over a ledge or something the case may be. And then the caption is something philosophical, like, guys, I can't even give you a philosophical, but you guys have seen it, right? And so I actually, I put together a social media course in the beginning of the year, and I actually came across this article, which it was a research study that someone went into and looked at, for example, the top 100 or the top 1,000 posts on Instagram that were hashtag yoga, and then had a look and kind of said, okay, they were in nature, how many were like able bodies, how many of them were slim women, which was majority of them, how many of them had certain poses linked with certain captions. And I read it and I went, oh, I mean, yes, I mean, obviously we've seen it and we all agree with it, but now seeing it in a research study I found was very interesting. So I will share that with you guys, because I think it's just an interesting read, and that just goes into the ethics of things. So you know that feeling before you post something and you go, yeah, Penny said, trust your gut. Know what you want to share and do so in a way, and think about your why. Think about, why am I sharing this? Am I doing it because maybe someone's going to comment and tell me I look good and that's going to make me feel better? Maybe that's not the best intention to be sharing it. However, if I want to share, I'm going to use Wellness Connection as an example. If I'm sharing this handstand post, but I'm actually doing it to tell people, like, it doesn't matter how you kick up, doesn't matter if you have a banana back, doesn't matter if you're still walking your feet up the wall. These are different ways that we'll get there. All right. So if we think about what mood we are instilling in our students, all right? How are we making people feel on the other side through what we share? So that's what I like to always think about when you start to decide what information you are sharing from your personal capacity, because that's also going to determine who resonates with you, because you will notice you follow accounts because you like them. You might see certain messages you like, you might see what you don't, and that's how you cultivate your content. And so people who are like-minded will do the same. Do you want to ask or add something, Cherise?
I just wanted to add, seeing that we're speaking about this, and I got started on social media with yoga, I must say a lot of postings actually scared me. It made me kind of feel like it is not something that I can do. I was actually under the impression that I would have to do yoga for at least 10 years to be able to do certain things that I've already been doing in this course. So it is really important to think about that. Yeah.
For sure. I'm sure there are many people that are like, I mean, I have a lot of friends, particularly from before I became a teacher, who don't do yoga. And they're always like, oh, I could never do it. And I'm like, but what? I mean, I also can't do a headstand off a ledge on a rock on a cliff. Never in my life. Like, no ways. That's ridiculous. So it's just about changing the narrative. And I think that it's through, you know, you guys are now 15 teachers. You guys are going out there conscious about the way in which you interact with media. People will see your pages, they'll notice that, you can talk about it. And so that's how you kind of see how things adapt from there, is through the way that you present information and just thinking twice about it, because it's very easy, even when you become a teacher, to share something because it's exciting. It's like, cool, I did a handstand. And then it's like, but you know, why, you know, what is so cool about it? Maybe your story of how you got into it and how you overcame the fear, that's relatable. All right. So it's just about the way in which it's presented, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, and you don't know what background people are coming from. There's this really cool trend. I don't know if you guys have TikTok, and I'm really sad to admit this because I'm a millennial and apparently I'm too old for TikTok, but apparently it's a new thing. Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah. But anyway, I find it really interesting because there's a trend going around there that says what I posted on Instagram and what was the truth. And then it would be something like this really cool picture, and the caption was like, well, let me tell you the actual story that happened behind here. And that's kind of the case with yoga. Someone's like, oh, do you want to do a split? Then just do half splits to lizard 10 times a day, and then you'll get there in a year. Maybe it worked for them, but it's like nothing. We know quick fixes. It's not always the case with that. So different backgrounds. You guys have now started to understand different bodies, how, you know, what are the conditions in which they're practicing? What is their natural flexibility like? And so we never really think about the context behind it. We take that as the truth. So it's very interesting. But that being said, I mean, you guys are all aware of social media because you guys have brought this up in conversation. On another end, it's a really powerful tool for connection, right? And we know our yoga practice, connection to self, connection to others, connection to, you know, something greater, if that's the reason you're coming to your practice, or if that's what the students are looking for. So it is another form to engage and to showcase your services. Like we said, like, you know, it doesn't always have to be in a boastful, grandiose way, but it can just be a means to show up. Just be like, this is what I'm offering, this is what I'm doing, so on and so forth. I don't know about you guys, I have this feeling, and when Catherine and I started adding this to the course a year back, she wanted to add something specifically on Instagram. And I said, I have this feeling that, you know how Facebook was like the thing, and then suddenly no one's on Facebook anymore. We use it for like a couple of things. I use it to watch videos every now and then, but I do feel that social media is temporary. Nothing stays the thing for a long amount of time. So the same reason as why you don't want to go on Instagram and rely on that solely, it's about using a little bit of everything and collecting those resources and making them kind of like what we'd think about, like, let me rephrase this. So this is what also what Claire kind of explained to me, and it made a big difference in my business, is she was saying that one day, what if Instagram crashes? What if Facebook's not around anymore? How are you still going to generate those leads? How are you still going to get people to your classes and keep them coming back? And the only way that we really get to do that is to be in, either have formed a relationship with them, meaning they've emailed you, they've WhatsApped you, they've pitched up for your class, but maintaining that connection through certain content that we own. We own our website, we own our WhatsApp, we own our newsletter database. We don't own Instagram. Mark Zuckerberg could decide he's going to create a new thing. People aren't on Instagram anymore. If you were solely relying on that for all your networking, it's not really a consistent stream. However, you might even decide that social media is not for you at all, and you are going to start a little studio and you're going to put up a little poster. I'm thinking about Sasha at the university. You're going to be a part of a club. You're going to start teaching, and then you'll maybe start a WhatsApp group, maybe start a newsletter, start off small and let it grow incrementally. But give yourself that opportunity to start small and grow. I think Instagram's a nice tool, and Facebook and any other forms you use to make those connections and get them to come. Okay, this is specifically with regards to trying to share your services. There's another side that we can use social media for, and that's more for the educational and sharing insights and awareness. So this is kind of what is a lot, it's kind of being talked about a lot at the moment, is to say that your Instagram doesn't always, or your social media doesn't always need to be a representation of your services. So for example, if I'm a yoga teacher, I'm going to use Wellness Connection as an example, because that's what Catherine does. Her main offering is yoga teacher trainings. All right. So her passions lie in her direct, kind of the things that make her unique is the love of anatomy and the biomechanics and that very research scientific base, and bringing in a lot of what's relevant in the yoga community at the moment. But I mean, we all know loves inversions. You guys have kind of like started to hit on that inversion journey as well. It's quite empowering, right? So the main theme behind the Instagram, it's really handstand focused. There's not a lot that's always not a lot of posts that got like, join our next teacher training, this is what's happening. Indirectly, by showcasing programs, educational posts, showing people how to do things, that is indirectly showing people what her school values. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like using your Instagram, and this is more from a sense, if you want to generate or build quite a strong following, you can say, well, what is a problem? People can't do handstands. Cool. Let's use this opportunity to provide content that can empower them. However, you're not going to make money off Instagram, right? Or maybe if you build it up so much and you start getting like endorsements or advertising or whatever the case may be, that's just another way to generate traction, and then you've got your service. So that's for those of you who are kind of like really keen on this Instagram game, because it's a lot of hard work generating content, thinking about what you want to share and put it out there. So that's kind of two things. That's why you might see why some pages, you guys have all seen Jenny Rawlings now, she shares a lot of educational posts, very similar to what Wellness Connection does, not only in inversions, a little bit of everything, but she also, she uses that as a means for starting conversations and sharing things she's passionate about. But her main service is through an online portal, through courses and a monthly membership for classes. So although there's some carryover, there's still different intentions behind them. Does that make sense? I don't know if I explained that very well. Yes. Do you have a question, Demi?
More something to share if anybody's wanting to do the social media thing, because that's kind of what I've started to do, using an Instagram page as like a space of vulnerability to share insights and things that I've learned. So to create that vulnerability of that market, so people can go, oh, I want to learn to do a headstand like that. I want to learn to do that thing. I'm going to see that person about that topic. And then maybe, it comes out like, I do classes every month, or I'm a teacher trainer, and it's slowly but surely starting to work for me, where I've put out so much time and energy creating content, and in the first while it's very slow, but eventually it picks up, and I might not be making money, but I've created a space where people like to come together and talk and read about things that they never read before. And I always get messages about people saying thank you, like that reminder of that thing I really needed that today. And I feel like it's those interactions that when you have that service to offer, people are going to be like, oh yes, that was the space that was created, which you're saying, like showcase your what experience they're going to have. And I just like not to be reliant on it, but it really is a really cool space to start in.
Well, I like what Demi's mentioning there is, like we said, to use it to form connections, because I think it's a powerful tool when you're sharing something. If people comment or you message people and you start to form connections with them, and it's kind of like, you know, on Instagram specifically looking at that engagement, some accounts have it really well. I mean, like, so when you see posts, you'll get through a couple of pictures who, you know, you might get a generally aesthetic picture that people like, but no one's commented on it, right? So it's like, yes, this picture's done really well, but what are you getting from that? And the real benefit from using social media is really when people are commenting or messaging you and you start an actual conversation. You know, it doesn't always have to be just a one-sided thing of what am I going to put out there. It's more about what am I sharing, but also what kind of feedback am I getting? How am I going to then translate this interaction to say, oh, you know what, I actually do offer a monthly class. Would you like to join? Or maybe I share actually more of this content through my newsletter and my website. Would you be interested in seeing more there? And actually turning that over. So for me, I do believe in a lot of quality over quantity, specifically in the yoga space where it is about that experience. If you were a big brand like Adidas or Nike, you know, not that they necessarily need the exposure, but they can just post pictures of their shoes and that doesn't have to be a beautiful story that goes along with it. It's like, it's just shoes, you know. When yoga, it's a little bit different than that because it's a service and an experience and not all. I mean, yes, products, if you are getting into like actual selling tangible products like props or whatever the case may be. So once again, it's looking, what do you want from this? I'm going to come to the questions now, but it's either using Instagram as a tool for sharing and education and really building that up and giving that the attention. And then also, you know, maybe using it as a means to showcase what you're offering at the moment. And just to put it in perspective, I don't know if you guys have been, I mean, this year as such, I've noticed just on my side, a little bit less interaction on Instagram. And I don't know about you guys, whether you feel like you're less on your phone. I like couldn't even be bothered to scroll right now. It's like, but the last time I did, every third post was a sponsored post, which means it's also becoming a platform which is more advertising based. And that kind of irritates me. So then I notice, okay, how am I reacting to social media? Maybe, not always, maybe other people are responding the same. So how can I still, I mean, you have to keep it so dynamic and flexible because we were all relying on, you know, studios, and then lockdown happened, and then everyone went online, and then Instagram was just like, whew, everyone online classes. And then suddenly I think people went, whoa, just none of the above. I'm out. So notice how people are responding and trying to form more long-lasting connections, because Instagram, social media, marketing, it's going to take a lot of time. So you want it to be efficient. All right. It's really great to share things, and it's going to take time to build up for sure. Especially when it comes to your database. I'm going to answer 2 more questions, and then I want to kind of jump off the Instagram chain and just get more to the business stuff. Sasha.
Mine's not actually a question. It's a reflection on something you said in the Instagram marketing webinar that you did in October. And it's just that, like, what do people get from your Instagram? Why would they want to be there? And that's really changed the way that I look at everything, even the way that I choose to follow people. You know, in lockdown, I did a lot of unfollowing of all the yogis and people that made me feel bad about myself, you know, because they're doing splits midair, you know, in a bikini. And I just was like, I'm not getting anything from this. And I think that's so important, especially if you are running a business, and something that Catherine's done so well, because if you follow Wellness Connection, you're getting free handstand programs. That's something that you get. You know, you want to turn on post notifications. I just think that it's so important to provide something valuable that's more than just a pretty picture if you want to do it for business.
Yeah. Do you want to add something to that, Caroline?
I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with like beautiful poses. And I mean, I follow some of those accounts and I find them quite inspiring, and yoga is also aesthetically enjoyable. I enjoy seeing people in these crazy wild poses, and yeah, it's beautiful. It's nice to look at, and there is a market for that. And that's why I think at the beginning of this lecture, when you said write down what your market is, that's like very important, because then you can obviously you know, because there's a reason why these Instagram accounts are doing so well, and that's because there is a market for them. They're people maybe like me, you know, shamelessly who enjoy these things, and you know, so yeah, just wanted to share that.
I'm glad you say that, because I think also everything I share is coming from my personal experience. And so now when Caroline says it, I'm like, you know, that's right. I love a cool picture, but I also like a caption that's going to tell me how to do that, because I don't know how you did that. Everyone wants something different. I also love when I see my friends posting pictures who never did yoga before, and they're doing a crow pose. And I'm like, that's so cool. Like, how amazing is that? And it comes down to, what are your preferences? What are the intention? How are you perceiving it? There's so many factors that come into play. And so Caroline knows she's going to follow accounts that make her feel good. She's going to share content that she enjoys sharing, that's authentic to her. And then that's why everyone kind of looks different. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because I mean, I also enjoy a good photo from now and then, and it's interesting. So that's I was going to go on a bit of a tangent, but I'm just going to see how I'm going to get there. So what I kind of wanted to jump back on, so just excuse me while I go off on a totally different note, but I was coming back to the financials, and this is going to lead us into more of the business side of things, because realistically, as you start to venture out as a teacher, we need to make money, right? Realistically, you guys need to decide, how am I going to do that? Your first question is whether you're going to need to do this part-time or full-time, which is a realistic question. You guys kind of know how much time you have to offer to that. If you have something already going, it's a good idea to keep with it and then start building up. You know, I think I've went through a year where I was teaching yoga full time, then I was working for another company, then I was doing something else, and then it will shift and change, and you will only know when you can kind of dedicate something full time, when time allows for it, when there's enough demand there. That's all personal. You guys will kind of have to suss that out for yourself. Am I being a bit glitchy, guys? Am I fine? Okay, so you guys started there, so I just want to make sure it was fine. So I want you guys to think about, firstly, whether you're going to do this first full-time or part-time. And then we need to take into account, okay, if you are needing a certain salary at the end of the month, this is kind of the amount that you need. How many classes, how many privates, how many retreats do you need to do to get that? All right. And someone asked me the other day, what do yoga teachers earn at studios? Because the studio had approached her and said, what's your rate? Which I think is kind of a little bit tricky, because studios usually offer the rate. They say, this is what I pay, this is what's expected of you, this is how it is. Now, I haven't taught in a studio for 2 years. I mean, I taught at a little studio here for older practitioner. I didn't know if I told you guys, the oldest student was like 82. And it was brilliant. And she was so cute. She'd like come in and she'd be like, oh, damn, I forgot my hearing aid. And then I'd be like, it's fine, just come put your mat right next to me here. So that was at that studio. So I haven't taught in the big studio in a while. But when I was teaching there, the average rate for a class was ranging from 250 to 350. And I say ranging because it was kind of like each studio has their own arrangements and different roles and responsibilities involved. 250 for a 60-hour was usually the average, taking into account that your gyms like Virgin Active pay a lot less. However, there are additional perks. So gyms, the last time I knew, it was like only 150, but you got a membership. There were certain amounts of courses that you got access to, and you don't need to be involved in any of the bookings. You just arrive and teach and go. Where another studio would maybe pay 250, but you need to be there 30 minutes before, you need to be there 30 minutes after. You might need to spray down the mats and hang them up. You know, each role was different. And so I think that's important for you to weigh up, to go, what's expected of me? What am I being remunerated? How far are you traveling? Do you need to pay for parking when you get there? Those are all things that make it dependent, all right? Private classes on the other end are completely different. I think the general for private at its cheapest is 400, 450, going up to like 700 for, especially, it's very dependent also on where you're teaching, what area are you in, you know, what's accessible to a lot of your students. And then people have different arrangements, like this might be your private rate, but some people are going twice a month, and so there's a specific rate involved. And also some studios have different agreements with regards to what is your level of experience? Maybe there's a rate for 0 to 5 years of teaching, 5 to 10, and there's kind of that scale. And then I've even heard where some studios do something where they say, okay, you have a base of 200 or 250. If there's over 12, you get 10 or 20 Rand for every student. So in those big studios where you're getting 30 to 40 people, the bigger the class is, there's some form of incentive. So it's really hard to kind of gauge. It's so worth it to chat to teachers in your area and get a bit of an idea. If you're teaching something like an event, you know, privates can even cost more. They can go like really high. If you find the right clients. I was teaching and I usually did 450 or 500. I did have to travel a bit, so there was a bit of travel expenses involved, but it was regular. You know, I did a lot of regular classes. You might have a higher rate for a once-off, depends on you. And then lastly, for corporates, you know, corporate classes are usually a bit more expensive because you are having to usually supply mats. If they don't have their own, you might have to have 10 mats on hand. And so private, depending on the group size, can be anything from 750 to 1.2. I'm going to give you a range because it depends whether there's 10 people or 20 people. So you guys can always chat amongst yourself. That's why the group stays active. So you guys can be like, oh, I've got a corporate, I'm thinking of charging this, I'm thinking of doing this. Because I think as much as we want to like charge the right amount, and we also want to be accessible and approachable, I also think it's important that we know our value as teachers. You guys have studied for this, you've invested in a course, you've invested your time and your energy. And so you will all at least 1 million times be asked to teach for free, and you decide whether it is something you want to do, if there's certain perks involved. Even charity drives, amazing, be involved with giving back. But then also it's okay to say to someone, no, I'm not going to teach at your studio for free. I've done my training, I've done my hours, this is my rate. So boundaries, hey? It comes up in different ways. Karen, did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to know if Cape Town is anything like Joburg, and that winter months people don't pitch. Because if you're hiring space and things like that, you have to pay your rent, and then you end up with 2 people per class.
Very seasonal.
There's 10 or 20 that come to your class.
Very seasonal. Yeah, I'm sure, you know, I don't think the main, you know, the big studios probably don't feel as much of a knock. I mean, I'm talking non-COVID times. I'm speaking generally in a normal world, but generally there would probably be some form of consistency. Numbers do drop a bit, but it depends on the size of your studio. If your studio can accommodate 40 and suddenly you have 30, it's not as much of a knock as 10 versus 2. You know what I mean? So I think that's the norm. Cape Town, incredibly seasonal. And I also think it's seasonal in the sense, like in the summer, I always used to teach outdoors. This is the first season I'm not, and I'm really grateful because it's been so windy for 2 weeks. I wouldn't have been able to put a mat outside. But there's things that are more available in the summer than that of the winter, which I think is a very South African thing regardless. You know, people like enjoying the outdoors when they're available. But the same thing, you kind of have to anticipate that in the winter, there's going to be a natural drawing inwards. So now that you know that, what else can you offer? What can you do? Maybe now that we've navigated this online world, maybe people are more comfortable doing yoga at home because they don't want to change and get in a car and it's too much admin or it's dark. A lot of the time it's the sun sets early and they don't have time. So what else can you offer during that time to boost your income, to boost your studio offerings during those winter months? And that's where I think being adaptable, it's one of the biggest things. I've worked for yoga companies who haven't changed. I don't think of changing your business model is essential, but I think it's important to notice when something's not working and to change it and to try other stuff. And an example of that, I was teaching outdoors and I was teaching weekly, and I noticed that the numbers were slowly declining, that I would sometimes get like 2 people to a class, which is not the end of the world, but you know, you don't have a lot of overheads when you're teaching outdoors. However, you've still put out the time, and so if you're not earning what you want, it is somewhat disappointing. So I then changed it up and I just started doing every second week, and the turnout was better, or I started doing them very randomly ad hoc because people didn't like the commitment. But then I built that up again and people wanted more, and then we made it weekly again. And so, you know, in a schedule, I think that's why studios go down to a skeleton staff in December, or where they might offer something different in the summer, maybe more workshops in the winter, more weekly classes in the summer, so people can plug in for 2 to 3 hours on a specific topic instead of coming during the week. Like on a Saturday morning from 9 to 12, we're doing a yin yoga and maybe like a tea and chill and chat, something like that. It's kind of like you just need to boost it up and go. There's so many ideas out there, and we're going to get into them now, but I'm desperately going to call a bathroom break. So let's all take a use of this opportunity. Let's come back at 5:10. Caroline, I hope you don't mind me asking. I heard you speaking on Penny's lecture that you worked in the advertising marketing space. What did you do? Oh, hold on, it's on silent. It's on mute. Catches me.
So I just did like an internship while I was studying at FCB Cape Town.
Cool.
Yeah. Do you know that?
I've heard about it, but I'm not so clued up on it. Was it in like digital marketing or general advertising or what?
They do like all round, but I worked in production, and then I asked to be moved into copy. So I was basically like just like exploring. I was just exploring it, but yeah, because how I actually ended up working for them is I actually did a shoot. Like I modeled for like they were like some alcohol campaign, and then then I ended up like doing something else for them, and I went to their like premises, and then I just asked like, do you have any like, can I work here, and so then I like, it's so interesting, but I was just like using that time to explore it as like a possible career. And that's when do you work in advertising as well, or?
No, so I mean, that's why it's so fascinating. I was thinking back, and this is probably should have been the first time, but I studied occupational therapy, but I just because I loved working with children and people in general. And I remember after I stopped practicing OT last year, mostly because I was just doing a lot of like Yoga South Africa stuff and teaching more yoga. And I remember looking back, and as a child, I would design a lot of stuff. I was like always like on Photoshop, and I'd like make magazines, like, how children do. And my mom is actually an accountant, and now she works more in like creation of newsletters and digital marketing. And I thought it's interesting how stuff comes up. And I'm a firm believer in, and maybe you guys can resonate, maybe not, but I feel like as humans, we are so multidimensional that I've never felt like one career always filled all of my cups. So there was a time last year where I was doing Yoga South Africa, I was teaching yoga, I sing at weddings, and I was managing charters in the waterfront. And that was for me the strangest thing, but it was the perfect amount of refreshing. That was like, it was different. I did that for 2 years, and it was like, you don't want to be in season with that. But I've always found that it's incredibly, I think it's incredibly important to be curious about different things, to try it. And then I was like, I kind of like this, but nah, I don't want to do this. And, everything kind of fills up. And that's kind of what I want to chat about also as yoga teachers, is being able to solely rely on yoga as one form of income. It's tough. It's not impossible, which I want to advocate for, but it sometimes doesn't happen like this because of the nature of it. And so it sometimes was important to teach yoga and do something else. Like I always think of Laura, like she also teaches private, she also runs aerial training, she also does Pilates. You know, she's dabbled in quite a couple of things, and you know, there's always there's a linking theme in it, and I find that it's kind of teachers once said to me, it's like, you know, you're filling up your toolbox with all of these different things, and then this is what I offer, and it's like mix of stuff, but it makes sense when you get there, which is pretty cool. I just want to close my door. So I think that, yeah, sorry, add on there.
No, I was just saying that you're like perfectly right. And also the skills that you develop from being in so many different spaces, as you say, that like, they all come into, you know, they come into one. Because for example, you asked like, one question, like, what do you have to offer, you know, and like, for example, with like my experience with maybe some acting and modeling and that kind of thing, I'm able to like command a space. Like I know how to do that. And that's, you know, that kind of thing. And I never actually thought I'd end up, I just didn't know how that skill would translate through there. Or let's say, for example, working in the advertising industry, obviously not for long, but just having that experience from the other side, you know, instead of being like on the receiving end or you know, being someone who just shows up on set, really helped me show up on set. But now it's probably going to help me with marketing in terms of yoga as well.
Yeah, and I want to tell you guys two stories, just speaking of what Caroline said there before we go into the next part, is that two examples. I was once doing a theater workshop, which loved them, and they actually asked me the ones to teach yoga as a form of warm-up. And I thought, how incredibly powerful is it to get into a space like that, to teach yoga for like performing artists before they go on stage, you know, like, I was like, I'd never thought of that before. And then I saw something this year, which happened in lockdown at a theater here. I've gone off on a tangent, but I think it kind of, it'll make sense. But one of the, she's an actress, but very energetic, very out there, knows how to command a space. She ended up giving workshops to personal trainers who now suddenly had to have that personality on screen. Because when you're in front of people, it's really easy to feed off their energy. And she noticed that, you know what, personal trainers are really struggling to connect through a screen. So she gave them almost like voice and movement acting and face acting, you know, which was so useful. So it's interesting to say that it doesn't, I want to say like a yoga practice doesn't always look like one thing. You know, it doesn't always look like a studio class. It's in so many different ways. I taught a class once for yoga teachers not yoga teachers, for school teachers at the end of term. And that was so fulfilling. And I loved it because it was exactly what I wanted to do, and taking yoga to places that, you know, the teachers wouldn't have necessarily gone to yoga. One or two of them had. And so you got to kind of open up your peripheries to see all the ways in which yoga can be presented, and in different ways, whether it be a movement practice or just a mindfulness and meditation practice. If the practice of mindfulness and meditation really, you know, resonates with you, it's really useful to go and explore that, because there's a lot of various different things that are looking for mindfulness classes or mindfulness presentations. So there are so many sections of it, and it doesn't always manifest in the physical form on a mat, is what I kind of want to showcase. And what you guys will see from the teachings practicals that you guys do is the entire practical that we offer, or you in doing the practical twice. Generally the first time there's a bit of nerves, you're kind of figuring it out. The second time you tend to find your voice. And I think it's really important to have that opportunity to refine and feel comfortable in who you are as a teacher, knowing that it will change, right? I mean, you as a person won't change, but you might go, oh, I really want to teach in the studio. And then you actually teach in the studio and you go, no. Or you might teach at your home and go, no, I want to be in a studio. You can do a complete shift, try it out and see how it goes. But essentially it's also you and your uniqueness, like your voice as a teacher, that is going to set you up for it, which is really, really exciting. Knowing that, and just to give you guys some insight, someone mentioned some yoga retreats. Everyone kind of gets what yoga retreats are and how they work. cool. Okay. Yeah, they're kind of big at the moment. So if we look at the general spaces in which you can teach, studios, homes, different environments, retreats, maybe one-day trainings, if you guys go on and do your 500-hour and all of those kind of things, maybe it's something in the future. Workshops are really powerful because I think workshops dive into a little bit more that we can't always tackle in a class. You might be able to do a theoretical component and really break it down and spend time on it, really bring in some of this theory that you guys are learning to students who don't just, you don't always get to tap into it in a class. And then retreats, you also get day retreats and weekend retreats with that. Any questions at this point? No. Okay, cool. So we've kind of navigated a little bit with regards to financials. You guys will have to figure out kind of what works for you and where you can show up and whether you can do it full part-time or full-time. And then from there, you obviously know that there are some ways in which we teach yoga which have more expenses and some that have less. So perks of teaching at a studio, if you're teaching for the studio, you don't often have to rent the space. You pitch up, you teach, you get your payment for the class and you leave. Some studios might have an arrangement if they aren't an established studio. For example, if you're just renting a space, you might pay them an hourly rate and then people pay you directly. So that's, if I'm in that situation, I really try to advocate for a commission payment because sometimes it happens where no one comes and then it's an expense. So consider commission-based if possible. Sometimes it's not possible. Try to work it out, especially if you are starting off, because commission-based can work in their favor too. If your classes pick up, it can work out with them. Depends. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. That's fine. So, but then the expenses that comes in with our, teaching studios is it's a little bit more travel involved. You might have to pay for parking if you're teaching in like a busy area, and it's your time. So depending how much time it takes you to get to the studio and back. So that's more where your expenditure lies, and I think it's more energetically. Where if you are, obviously if you're doing something outside, not much expenses. So generally those classes can be a little bit more accessible and affordable, which I kind of like. Also now with lockdown regulations, people are drawn to it because you're naturally a little bit more socially distanced, which is a perk. If you guys are interested in teaching online, I would say wait till the new year. Just suss out what the online space is doing because it did this jump and now it's doing one of those. And I think it's eventually going to settle out at a 60% in-person, 40% studio online, because I think people like the accessibility and the ease of being online, but you'll just have to see what the market is looking like then. And then, if you are running your own studio, you understand that there will be a certain amount of monetary outlay that will go into getting a space, getting props, supporting yourself up with some sort of booking system, and then you'll have a certain amount of your budget which will be allocated to marketing, whether it be advertising, whether it be running a launch event, whatever the case may be for that. I wanted to use the last 30 minutes to just share some of my tips as to things to keep an eye out, and maybe just planting seeds when you guys go out there, because maybe you don't know the answers as yet. So I really like Facebook. I know it's kind of like a little bit outdated. I think it's really cool for creating events, for sharing photos, for doing certain things that maybe Instagram can't do. I feel like it depends on your market. If the people that attend your classes make use of Facebook, definitely make use of it. I find community groups on Facebook really, really powerful. And I don't know if it's simply because of the area I live in, but if I'm teaching an outdoor class and I share it to my local Fish Hook neighbors group, then I get a bit of traction from there, or it's more likely that people tag a friend. And so I find that quite useful. Your events can generate some traction. And I actually have this year, which I've loved, is actually scheduled all my posts from social media or Facebook. So there's I use Facebook Creator, which allows me to link to my Instagram page, and I can decide this is what I want to share. I want to consistently share 4 posts a week. I'll break down and say, what is the kind of content I want to share? Maybe it's an image, a little educational quote, educational post, a quote, something random. And I'll actually schedule that in on a Monday. It's a little bit more work on a Monday, but it's really wonderful when Thursday rolls around and you haven't had to do much. So Facebook Creator allows me to schedule my post and it goes out on Instagram automatically without me having to do it on my phone. And that's just from me personally, it makes me spend a little bit more little bit less screen time or phone time, which is useful. So if you guys are interested in that, that's a really, and this is more if you want to create a consistent presence on social media, that's really useful. But yeah, Facebook groups and events have been useful for me. And then with regards to websites, I must admit, I've got mixed views from the purpose that websites can be quite costly, because you're either going to do it two ways. You're either going to pay a web developer who's going to charge you at a minimum 6 to 8 grand if it's something really basic. And then they're going to code a site for you. Chances are you might not even know how to do it because you don't know how to code. And so you're always dependent on using them in order to maintain things on the site, which is often not nice. We want to be as independent as we can. However, I believe websites are useful if you are running a studio, if you're running trainings or retreats, because you need something that sends across that like professionalism, something that like it's validity. It says people like, this is a real thing. I've got this nice page. Here's pictures. Here's my number. You can see I'm the real deal kind of thing. However, if you're a teacher just moving around teaching from space to space, I would say a website is only useful if you're going to utilize it for all the options that you have. If you have the capacity to create your own website, which is what I did on Squarespace, I love it. I have found that for what I need, it's perfectly suitable. And it did take a lot of time. It took me like 3 to 4 months to get it done, and a lot of forums and a lot of YouTube videos teaching me how to do it. And finally, it ended up where it needs to be. But don't be afraid to ask for help. I've actually made a really nice connection lately with a past Wellness Connection student who actually does website designs at a more affordable rate. And what I love is that she actually understands yoga teachers. Find a web designer who understands you and your brand and doesn't just like slap a website together and goes, cheers, that's it, and then charges you 15 grand. I've seen it happen way too many times, guys. It's not even a joke. It's really sad. So if you love the creativity, play around. I mean, Wix and Squarespace almost sponsor and advertise on every YouTube page. So I'm sure there's a lot of people using it, but I would say if you're going to have a site, make sure it's really useful with all the information and that you actually use it. Meaning you write blogs, you update content, you send people towards your site, because there's millions and trillions of websites out there. And just like you wonder how someone's going to come to your class, how are they going to land on your website? They need to be directed there. They need to be told it's there. Maybe over time it grows well enough that people can find you on Google, which it takes some time to build that up. So bear that in mind. And it's useful to look at the statistics of your website to see how many people are visiting my site, and is it worth the money I'm spending on it? Which for a Squarespace account, I think that the lowest package is $280 a month. That being said, you might not need a website. You might want to opt for things like a Facebook page as your website or a certain profile directory. There is no right or wrong way. It's just in a way that you feel it gives you what you need. All right. So I really like websites if they're being utilized, if you're using it to share content, to get newsletter, to get emails, and then to keep in contact with them information-wise. Is anyone here kind of like wanting to make a site, wants to get one done? Demi was nodding her head. I think maybe you want one. Maybe. Okay, cool. No one looks like. Okay, Demi's made one. I'll go check it out. I love looking at people's websites. So if you want to make one, it's fun to play around and be creative, you know? So that's kind of one thing to consider. But essentially, I think really what holds quite a lot of value are things like WhatsApp groups and newsletters. No one's going to have a WhatsApp group for a studio that has like 500 members, because I've been on a group like that before, not with yoga, it was for another club, and it's just mayhem. So what I started when I did outdoor yoga was I started collecting numbers and I started an admin posting only group. So if you have 50 or less students, it's actually a more effective way to keep in touch with students directly to their phone. I've also found it really useful for kids yoga. Parents don't read a lot of emails, they don't have time for that. They just want the notification straight to their phone. Even schools, like sometimes classrooms have a WhatsApp group where the teacher just sends, remember tomorrow, pack your lunchbox. They do the same for kids yoga. Remember to bring this and this and this, or there's no class tomorrow, we've got a public holiday. So yeah, WhatsApp groups are really cool. Newsletters, I I love newsletters. I don't know about you guys. What I like about them is, so you've got two platforms. The one that's probably the most popular is MailChimp. I use that for a while. It's free for less than 2,000 subscribers, which is good. I then changed to the local variation. Doesn't have as many features, but it's called Mailblaze. It's not free, unfortunately. But what I liked about it is that I think MailChimp is very well known. So for quite a while, it kind of gets picked up as a promotion because it comes from MailChimp. So it would automatically go into people's promotions. When I first started with Mailblaze, it didn't do that. So the opens on my newsletter went like a lot more people were seeing it. But lately in the last 2 months, it's changed as well. So what I do with my newsletter is I send them out once a month or twice a month, depending on you. It's a nice way to keep people informed. And I'll use links there to redirect them to my Instagram page, to my Facebook, keep those back-end connections running. And then I'll even share the newsletter to Facebook so that people can open it on their web browser if they're not subscribed. So I think they're kind of cool. I really like them. Some people, you also have to accept that sometimes you'll send a newsletter and 60% of people won't open it. And that's chances are because you are one of 50 million emails that have landed in their inbox, and it's just not a good day, not a good time. And so it's fine. Especially if you're doing something off MailChimp where it's free, it's just your time, and it can be quite useful. They also give you stats, so you can decide, okay, 2 people are opening this, it's not worth my time, I'm just gonna WhatsApp them. It's so much easier. So you guys will decide what works for you. Other platforms, so you get other platforms that are more directory based. So I've actually got 4 here, one of which is Yoga South Africa, which is the one I run, which is I've made the teacher's profile directory free this year. So every teacher can have a little profile on there, which just has your details, a little bit about, and then maybe it has your schedule and a map. So you get some platforms that have those, which you can use as a form of a basic website, because it's very limited in what it offers you. It's not going to have a whole blog and a whole this, but the Yoga South Africa has one of those. You also have Holistica, which is more of a holistic wellness directory. They don't only show yoga, they show all different kinds of things. As far as I know, they got a bigger newsletter following. I'm not sure the exact number, but they do charge 150 Rand a month. There's something called Yoga Trail, which is not very popular, but it exists. And I see some teachers are still on there. So that's kind of nice to keep an eye out for. And then some of the other forms, if you guys are running retreats, maybe you guys have heard of something called bookyogaretreats.com. It's managed by Tripreneur. And they kind of advertise. You can advertise your retreat on there no matter where it's happening in the world, and they work on a commission basis. I think they take 14% for every booking. Yoga South Africa offers advertising, but it's just on a pure package basis, and it's just in South Africa. So if you're doing something international or overseas, even local retreats get a lot of traction from Book Yoga Retreats because they're super big. There's a lot happening on there, and people tend to land on their page quite early on. Thanks, Summer. I'm glad that you follow the site. So yeah, it's grown and it's changed, but you can always make connections. So I find Yoga South Africa is a really good platform to see what other people are doing, not in a way to be like, oh, I want to spy on others, but it's nice to see what's happening. It's nice to even go to other studios' websites or other teachers' websites and go, I like this, I don't like this, oh, this is what they're charging, oh, this is where they teach. And it's just a means of creating a kind of an idea of what's happening, all right? And knowing like who are my audience that I've written down there, and how am I going to connect with them? What are the means that I'm going to reach out to them and take it from there? Another platform I use, which I'm quite embarrassingly enough, took an hour and a half to mention it, but I'm sure you guys all know Canva.com, online design tool. It will change your life. If you don't use it, everyone does it. Everyone thinks our designs are so amazing. It's like, nah, I just did it on Canva. Caroline's like, yes. But I think that's a really useful tool to use if you feel like you're maybe not the most creative. They give you templates and ideas. And there is a free version. It gives you access to some free stock photos, which if you want to use as fillers on your social media, bear in mind that you and maybe 20 others are using the same stock photos, so keep that in mind. But I have an upgraded account of Canva. I think it's 200 Rand a month. And what it just gives you is it gives you a lot more. So if you do find yourself creating a lot of content in different forms, it could be pamphlets, social media, flyers, CVs, the upgraded account gives you more images, more illustrations, and it just gives you lots of templates. So especially when it comes to things like creating stories, it gives you the section where you can create a brand kit, which I don't know if it does that on the free version, but you can choose your colors. Zani's having a hangover, good time there. You can choose your colors and your fonts that you want for your brand that resonate for how you want to make your students feel. And that will relay all the way through and can come across in all your posts, because essentially the values or what we decide in the beginning will weave its way to help you choose what colors and logo and what imagery you will use. And that is what we want to be consistent through all our pages and consistent to who you are as a human being. And something that's really useful, and is actually, I think I'll email you guys for those who want it. It's not a compulsory thing, but I'm going to email you a checklist that kind of just asks you what I've broken down into 4 steps. 1 being like the values, 2 being creating your color palette, 3 being what you need to design in terms of what forms of media, and then what's going to help you to stay consistent, like planning your posts, being consistent, being authentic, all of those things. And then along with that, I will also send you 3 questions, which is more thought processes. So when you're on Instagram and you see this yoga teacher and you're like, oh, I really like their page. And it's like, what about it speaks to you? Do I like the imagery? Do I like the colors? Do I like the fonts? How does it make me feel? Oh, it makes me feel really calm. Okay, cool. This is kind of what I associate with calm. It's kind of like the power of color and wording and imagery. It's really fascinating. And I think it's interesting when we are relying on these forms of media, we want to make sure that people see our page and they're like, oh, I know this teacher teaches calm yin, and that's what they expect. And then they come into your class and then you're like doing handstand drills. I'd get the biggest fright of my life. And I'm going to tell one more story and then I'll open up questions. So I actually follow this teacher, and she's very strong. There's a lot of I want to say a mix, a lot of like inversions and strong practices, but also a lot of mindfulness, brings in a lot of her spiritual journey, what books she's reading, kind of that personal transformation. And so because I saw that aspect of her practice, I went to a class and I'm like, man, I'm going to work so hard today. And it was such a slow flow. And I didn't mind. I mean, I like her as a teacher, I liked her personality, but it's interesting how I had that perception that I was going to do a strong class because of what I saw in social media. So we come into something with an expectation, and I think that you will never be able to control everyone's expectations. However, if you can use it in a way that's appropriate, it makes sense, right? It's only going to help. Any questions at this point? Well, is there any things that you guys feel you want to implement moving forward, whether it be not even on the social media, but anything about the actual practicalities of where to from here? I finished my teacher training, then what? Like, what comes next? Because there's kind of this limbo period where you go, how do I do this, right? Or are you guys feeling like you're gonna nail that? No, no. So an interesting thing I know you had a couple of questions for Bev, because I watched your chat with her. You were asking a little bit about teaching beginners, teaching mixed level classes, practicing your sequence. Did you guys feel like you got the answers from that? There's no loose ends. Look, I listened to the conversation, just want to make sure everything was clear on that. Cool. Bev might have covered this in her other session. No, she's only doing the other one today. I don't think I heard it in that one. But let me know if, so when you guys, is there anyone who wants to teach in a studio? Maybe we should even, before we go in there. Okay, so what will happen if you want to, it's quite important to know, it's essential to know. If you want to teach in a studio, we said it's quite tricky to have an in, all right? It's kind of, you need to have I remember moving to Cape Town. I sent my CV out to a lot of studios, realizing that that probably wasn't the most effective means. They didn't know who I was personally. They were just looking at this piece of paper. There's a lot of teachers out there. So there was nothing that really, I don't know. And I do find that yoga teachers and studios aren't always the most administratively driven. They're a lot more see you in person. So sometimes emails come and go and they're like, what email? So I didn't find personally that emails were very effective means for getting work. Some people are really good with emails, but a lot of teachers are not. So you sometimes feel disheartened when you don't get a reply, thinking they don't even care. Meanwhile, it's probably because they haven't looked yet, all right? So I have found that making connection in person is very useful. Hi, I'm a teacher in the area. I live right around the corner. I'm available to maybe be on your sub list. That's generally, unfortunately, a way in to say you can call on me when your teachers, because a lot of them time they don't have an open spot, and so you need to kind of step in when there's an availability there. Yes, Summer?
I'm sorry, you may have already answered this question. I've just been so in and out. I wanted to actually find out, because I heard you say you haven't taught in a studio, I think, for 2 years. So what exactly have you been doing besides Yoga South Africa within the yoga space, and besides your occupational therapy side, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I think from a personal capacity, I've changed a bit. So when I first moved, when I graduated in Pretoria, I taught for 6 months while I was working in a hospital. So I worked part-time at a hot pod yoga. So I did hot yoga there for a while, which was quite interesting. There was only literally like 2 yoga studios in Pretoria at that time. I think now there's 4. But I started teaching outdoors in Pretoria. And so when I moved to Cape Town, I taught at 3 somewhat bigger studios. And then I worked for the company, the Om Revolution, which Penny mentioned. And we used to do corporate outdoor beach classes. So I worked there for about a year and always maintained doing outdoor classes. I then moved from Claremont to Fishhook. If anyone knows Fishhook, it's like little out the way, small little place, not much happens here, bigger, older communities. So then I was doing OT and I was teaching. I guess I say I haven't taught at a studio, but in the last 2 years, I was teaching at a home-based studio here for older practitioners. So for the last year, it stopped in May, unfortunately. So I stopped teaching there because they made their classes a bit smaller and they're a bit of a high risk group. And I was teaching classes there and outdoors. So I was always teaching, but with something else. And that was my personal preference, because I personally decided that I didn't want to teach 12 classes a week for yoga. I did enjoy the OT things. And then when I started working for Wellness Connection, then there was a natural kind of, the children that I was seeing in OT naturally came to the end of their therapy, so the transition was there. So I know it's kind of a tricky one. I've always taught yoga in different spaces, but what I found what resonated with me was teaching older people and children and outdoors. So that's where I really refined that. And then here on the training, you teach kids yoga, you teach kind of what you learn from your therapy. So you see how you take snippets of it and you can share it in your practice. And that a big decision of that was because I changed locations. So even where I live compared to the Wellness Connection studio is still about 30 Ks, so it's still quite far. But now with things being online, I could have taken the opportunity to say, I want to jump online. I felt there was a lot of that at the moment. So I have a lot of friends who teach full-time, and I think it's definitely manageable if there's enough demand in your area. And I just made the decision that where I stay, I didn't see myself teaching 10 to 12 classes a week, and also getting private classes. But if they do come up every now and then, especially in the summer, you get some of your clients who come and you can travel. So a very long-winded answer. Can write a biography now. Yoga biography. So I think it's also important to show you guys that things change, and that your journey of teaching can always be somewhat different in a sense. You look at a space like Wellness Connection that was very much based also on offering classes and trainings, and so the classes used to do well because the studio was beautiful, you know, and they had incredible studio space there. And so that natural progression comes where Catherine decided, you know what, I really enjoy the trainings and I want to focus on that. And now it's become more of a school than a studio, simply because it offers more of trainings. And so I think you'll feel that natural progression when it comes up. And I do think when you guys will teach, you will feel the spaces where you feel the most alive. It sounds super cliche, but I didn't enjoy teaching in a studio space. One of my favorite studios was City Rock. I loved it, but they moved. So my favorite studio moved, and circumstances will lead you to where you be. But I really gravitated to teaching outdoors. So I wish there were more. I would attend classes outdoors also. So I do hope there was more in my area, but it's an interesting thing to note what you like. Did that answer your question? It was very long. How do you manage working out classes for teaching and maintaining your own personal practice? This is an interesting one from Cherise. So what you go through waves. I'll be honest with you. When I was teaching a lot of classes, let's say I was teaching, I think the most I ever taught a day was 3 or 4. I did not want to do more yoga on that day. I was like, I'm out. And it's fine. I think it's also important for you guys as teachers to know it's okay if you kind of have that experience in your practice, because it will happen. However, I found that my personal practice kept me inspired, even if it didn't look like a traditional practice, even if it didn't look like 60 minutes on a mat. Sometimes it's something a little bit funny. I might just play around with some transitions, or I might just do a breath work or mindfulness or meditation. But I think maintaining your practice in any shape or form helps you stay in tune with what you're teaching. And it also really helps you to stay motivated and to think of something new. Sometimes you also need to start attending a couple of classes to fill up your own cup and then be on the receiving end, because I felt that as a teacher, you like teach, and then your practice goes down. So don't be hard on yourself if that happens. You'll find your way back. You'll be like, okay, cool, I'm teaching enough at the moment. This is my day where I'm going to come back to my practice. And I do think if you take on that, I mean, this course is not really a nice one to use as reference because you guys are doing a lot of yoga already. And so you're like sponges. You're taking in all this information and you'll let it sink in. And then when you go out there, as you move into the rest of December, you'll feel that you get that urge back to practice, where now you're being led through a lot of the work and it's a lot of time spent on your mat. So we're like giving you the stuff and you're just like, so it'll sink in. Did Monique say that? Yes, input, output. I love that, what she said. And I think there's a lot of discussion at the moment, and it's nice to highlight that yoga comes in different shapes or forms. If you don't spend 60 minutes on your mat and do your whole sequence, doesn't mean you didn't do yoga. Sometimes it's like 20 minutes here, and then one day you might be like, yes, a 90-minute yin, and then other days you're just doing a couple of handstand hops, you know. So it is about finding that balance of what you need from your practice. And I used to have a teacher who used to say that time spent on working on your sequences and playing around on your mat isn't a replacement for your practice, which I kind of agree with, but don't agree with. I think it's really important to have that time where you just flow without thinking in a teacher's mind. So where you let yourself be a student. So whether you need to do that whether you can do that as a self-practice or whether you need to be guided, I think either one is fine. It's really great when you start teaching to let someone else take the ropes and to just be on the receiving end and to not wonder, I wonder why she transitioned like this, or I wonder what my triceps are doing in this pose. Just shoops, switch off and just move. You guys will need it, I promise. So turn to other teachers for support, and also go to other classes because it does inspire you. I find that it fills up your cup. So that's quite fun for that. Any other questions that you guys have? Do you guys feel a little bit more empowered moving out here to teach? Do you feel as though there's space for it? I personally, yes, Ani?
Oh, please finish first. I'll after you finish your thought.
So kind. I actually personally love to hear where your thought processes are as to what you want to do. And I think purely from the essence of just being a teacher for 5 years, it's amazing how many connections and networks you make, that when you share your vision with people, it's amazing how someone might say, oh, you know what, you know who you like, I was speaking to this teacher who wants to do the same thing, or, you know, I was speaking to this venue that's offering out this space. And I actually had this conversation with a friend of mine where I said to her, oh, I was thinking of doing this. And she told me, oh, you know what, I actually came across a post the other day on Instagram of a venue looking for a teacher, and I thought this person could be suited. And so that like that linkage there is really quite important. So I know I would love to hear it. I'm sure Laura would love to hear it. I know Catherine loves to hear also what everyone is keeping up with. I know you guys haven't seen her personally, but she also watches some of the lectures, so she's seen you guys, and you guys have obviously chatted onto an email at the start of the course. So sometimes if she gets job opportunities or people that email her, she likes to share that in her groups as well. So opportunities come up in different places for different people, and so I think that's my favorite thing, just connecting people. I think it's really awesome to get people to make those connections. Yes, Ani. Oh, I lost your sound. It's your head. Oh no, there we go.
Yeah, sorry. No, I've got two screens and my mouse pointer just disappeared for a second. Sorry. So I wanted to ask about the business side. They were a year or so ago, there was someone here sort of marketing spiritual healing type stuff. And Bloemfontein is a very small community. And as Trudy mentioned, it's very risky putting yourself out like that. But what I thought was wrong with this strategy was it felt like it was a money-making scheme, but then it was trying to advertise itself as this healing thing. And then it was offering these services, but payment with donation. And I don't know, I just want to hear everyone's opinion on what you think about donations, because for me, I immediately felt like, okay, what's a donation? Like, can I bring 10 Rand? Can I bring 100? Should I bring 500? You know, you don't, that was a bit uncomfortable. So that was the one thought, donations. Like, what do you think about it? Secondly, has anybody ever asked for their money back? Like, if you ask for money up front, like, and they didn't enjoy it, you know, has it ever come up that they're like, no, please, where's the money back guarantee? Can I get this back, please?
I'll answer.
And then,
so let me answer. Let's stick with those two. Come back with the last one.
Okay.
One. I'll answer the second one because I think I'll just have, and then you guys can give your input on the donation base, because I do have some insight with that. No, I've never had someone ask for their money back. Mostly because once you've experienced the class, you got what you paid for. That's where expectation comes in. What did they expect from the class, or what they didn't do either? If for some reason you cannot perform on what you've promised, I've even had situations, and this is more hearsay from a friend of mine who hosted a retreat, that she was marketing in one way and didn't execute or didn't meet that expectation. So in that case, it was a women's only retreat, and then there was going to be a chef or something that was a male. Not that it was an issue, but someone said, look, just be open and transparent and be clear on that. Because some people care about those details. So be very mindful when you are marketing it, that you are meeting that expectation. And when it comes to yoga and teaching, you're going to have some conflict. It's finding that balance of where do you stick your ground to say, look, I've had someone pitch up to my class and say, I didn't know this class was paid. So I said to her, what do you mean? And she said, oh, I thought it was a free class and it was outdoors. And I've maybe taught one free outdoor class years before. And I said to her, no, on the Facebook event, it says it was 50 Rand, which is not a lot of money for an outdoor class compared to like a studio where you're paying 100 or 150. So she had that expectation that it was free. And so she actually came in late, and I actually only realized after the class. And so you just kind of have to realize, okay, am I going to try and force this lady? She clearly hasn't brought the money. Or am I just going to say, okay, if you come back next time, like, what can you do, right? If someone had to ask for their money back after you've given something, I'd say, no, this is what it was. Always have some sort of agreement or expectation, or they know what it's going to cost. As much as you can get payments in advance, You guys don't want to be chasing down people for payments. Only corporates and privates either pay at the end of the month if you have some form of signed agreement with them, or they pay in advance for their classes. If you ever have a situation where a studio doesn't pay you, I hope that never happens to any of you guys. Generally, you get paid at month end for that, so you get paid once the classes are completed. I've never had it where someone's asked that, but if that is the case, you can always chat to us and ask. But I also haven't had a friend happen to her either. It's kind of a sticky one, but that's kind of where you got to bring out your professional side and say, look, I held up my end of the bargain. You paid for a class. I offered you the class. This is what I gave, and this is the agreement. That's all you can do. I think Demi's, Sasha's going to give input on the donation thing, I think.
So I personally love donation-based classes. I think it depends on your target audience, which is why the questions that Taryn asked us in the beginning were so important. Because at Stellenbosch University, I'm part of a spirituality and yoga society, and we do yoga classes every week. So if you're part of the society, you pay like an annual fee, and then you get there are, I think, 6 classes offered each week. You get 1 class you can attend for free. And then the others used to be donation based. And this was great for students because it made it accessible for all the students, because it meant that if you arrived and you have been eating baked beans for the last week, you could bring 10 Rand and you could get your yoga class for 10 Rand. But then there are students who are in better financial positions and are able to bring 50 Rand. And that's great, so like that really helps. 50 Rand's also, I suppose, not really a lot of money, but there are people who donate a lot more. And that really makes a difference because it makes it accessible for the entire student community, not just the wealthy student community.
I also want to add on what Sasha said. Sorry, Sasha, but just to give you guys some of like a greater scheme or context, before lockdown, donation-based classes were only really available for community classes, which happened at a studio once a week, where they would take the donations from that and it would go towards a certain charity like Earthchild Project, or it would be a community class where funds would go towards a certain organization. And then also some outdoor events that were donation-based, either for charity purposes or in a means of making yoga more accessible and affordable, which I think is really important. And then whether that donation-based is more based on, kind of the aspect of, it's kind of based on trust, like pay what you want or what you think worth, and you just have to trust that people will make that decision for themselves. However, I have gotten feedback since lockdown, because a lot in the beginning, a lot of online classes were made free and then made donation-based, and people are like, I don't know what to pay. This is so awkward. How do I determine the worth of this class? So having some form of, like, saying donation of 20, 30 or 50 Rand, then at least you say, okay, cool, this is the scope of which I'm working with. It's just an option. You don't have to do it this way. But people then go, oh, do I donate 200 Rand? Do I donate 10 Rand? Sometimes people need some guidance as to that. So for an example, what I see Earthchild Project does, if you guys don't know Earthchild Project, they're an organization based in Cape Town, and they offer yoga classes, sustainable life skills, but then also like worm farming and hiking to children. I think 3,500 children in Khayelitsha and Lavender Hill. And they would say, if you're going to donate, then their donation was preferably 250 Rand, because that was the amount that sponsored one child for yoga for a year. So it puts context onto it. So to say, you're doing an online class donation based of up to 50 Rand. Then it shows people like, this is kind of what I'm working with. Or a workshop is donation based between 150 to 250, because you want to give a range. And I mean, if people are donation based, is usually more on the affordable side. So probably 100 Rand and under would be the queue for that. However, I've seen now, just because this year has been a bit financially draining, a lot of places have payment plans. You see that available with retreats and trainings. You also see there might be student rates or unemployed rates, which are kind of tricky to navigate, but then also sliding scales. So I've seen some studios, I've seen workshops and trainings offer a sliding scale where this is the normal rate, this is a community or a discounted rate if you feel that better suits your financial position at the moment. And then you also get a supporter rate where someone who has, you know, maybe wants to support someone else, they can take that rate and, you know, but it's usually done discreetly, and it's usually no one knows what everyone else is paying, and everyone gets there, and then it's fine, you know. So those are the different kinds of payment structures that happen. When it comes to yoga classes for you as a teacher, obviously as simple as you can keep it as better, because you're going to have to be doing recons and calculations at the end of the month. But Zani, if you don't like donation class, then don't do it, you know, then just decide this is what it is. It's either free or it's paid, and there we go. So it does, there's different sides to each of things. I think what Sasha was saying with regards to like a community or an organization class, or those are maybe more understandable for a community, for a donation-based setting.
I don't have a problem with donations. I think it's fantastic, and giving the range actually just makes it, that makes sense, because I don't want to go to something, bring my 10 Rand, and then it was this fantastic thing where they feed me, you know, and wash my feet and everything. And then I'm like, oh, here's my 10 Rand, you know. So for me, that was just a little bit like, okay, where do we pitch this? So I think I like the range. And then I think you answered my third one, which was just about what is your view on teaching for free, but I see time is finished. You know, in terms of putting yourself in the market, if you're going to be teaching for free in the beginning because you're still learning, you know, and that expectation, you've been teaching for free, now you're going to start charging, you know, but you don't have time for that. So
I'll add on this, and once again, it's so personal. All I can add is maybe what I've experienced and what I've heard from fellow teachers. I have taught a fair share of free classes for various reasons. I mean, donation-based or charity-based classes, I was always happy. I used to teach for Earthchild, and it was just so amazing. I loved it. I taught 1 or 2 classes for them, or different kind of conferences that they would host. I just loved what they stood for. And so that was very, you know, I was happy to do that. I think you can very quickly tell the intention behind why someone's asking you to teach for free or not. If a corporate is asking you to teach for free, you can ask why, mostly because they think they can kind of get away with it. Some places teach their first trial class. So let's, you know, come and pay, you know, you'll come and teach 1 class for free to see if they like it. I would still even say, if you wanted to do that, a discounted rate or whatever, but not even, because corporates or big organizations, they do have the capacity to pay for it. So I think just keep that in mind. That also being said, exchanges and collaborations are completely up to you, and whether you feel as though it's worth your energetic exchange for that. I've taught a class, I'm trying to think of an example. Where have I taught in an exchange? It might be, so for example, if you teach at some festivals, sometimes the agreement that you have at a festival is you teach 1 class, but you get entrance to the festival for free. You decide, is that worth my time? Is it not? You might get additional leads and exposure from it, but also maybe you've had to give up this and this and this in order to be there. So I think that comes down to a personal thing, but for me, it comes down to energetic. Am I maybe getting something in exchange? If I'm not willing to give my time and energy to an organization or an initiative that I enjoy, is it giving me back something in a different form other than payment? Maybe it's energetic or whatever the case may be. I think that's completely up to you. I don't think there's any harm in teaching the odd free class. I think free classes are really nice for launching something. If you're opening a studio or if you're launching something and you can do 1 free class or a day, do it for means of generating some awareness, but don't feel you need to, because you guys also deserve to be paid your worth. Yes, do you want to add something, Caroline?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to share that I was actually just planning on teaching outside in my neighborhood, and also hopefully doing maybe like an early morning, I don't know, yoga session for the domestic workers in my area for free. But then interestingly, so that's hopefully going to happen if I can just coordinate everything. But then 2 yoga studios have opened in like walking distance from where I live, because I can't drive and I don't have a car. So I was just literally this month, they like, it's just like blew my mind. Pardon?
Where do you stay?
I live in Newlands. So there's a
yoga opened up.
Yes, this Yo Yoga and then the Source. They used to be in Constantia, and now they moved to Bishop's Court. So yeah, it's like,
You know that.
yeah. So I was just like, that was like, well, for me, it felt quite divine because, you know, I was like, just when I'm finishing this teacher training, 2 yoga studios have decided to move, and they haven't been yoga studios in this area for quite some time. So that was quite encouraging. I just wanted to share that.
It's amazing. There's another studio there called Yoga Way with Melissa Brake, I think it is, in
I've
Newlands.
never heard.
Small studio, you know, worth
I
contacting.
didn't know that.
You know, it's worth checking out. But I think even that, like even what you've got there, Caroline, is to offer both. You know, because some people don't want to go to a studio, or maybe sometimes the time or the schedule doesn't suit them. So anything anything is worth giving it a shot. It's about right time, right placement, stuff like that. It's 6 o'clock, and I don't want to make too much of your time in the evening because I know you guys are going to go straight away and work on your peak pose sequences. What? Okay, but on a serious note, I saw a lot of these. But on a serious note, I do want to see those sequences sooner rather than later. Just on for those who are still busy on the summary, for those who are ready on the full template for next week. For some of you guys, I know messaging in the week is a tricky time because there's a lot of things coming at you, but just take some time, maybe tomorrow morning before our yin, and just tweak those 1 or 2 things. Chances are when we do the full pose, there'll be some tweaking as well. So know that what you send me is a work in progress, and we are tweaking, refining it, and making it better so that when you leave here with the right skills. I will see you guys at 10 a.m. tomorrow for a yin yoga class. I'll send a message on the group. We're going to start with a nice restorative practice. Cool. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Erin. Bye.